you this evening. If you don't know me, my name is Ben. I'm one of the ministers of the church here. I'm going to be leading us through our time this evening. Let me kind of give you a feel for how this evening is going to work. I'm going to speak for 15, maybe 20 minutes or so on just a few words of a story that Jesus told. Then we're going to hear from someone amongst us a bit more about how that story has impacted their life. Then we're going to have a chance for questions, comments, and so forth at that point. So if you want to grab the sheets on your table, on the back of those there is just a couple of verses, sentences from the Bible. We've had kind of booklets previously because there's been more words. A much shorter story this evening. So I'm just going to read those. It's just two sentences that Jesus says in his life on earth, and we're going to think about what they mean for us. Let me read them. Again, Jesus says, "The kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found one of great value, he went away and sold everything he had and bought it." Those are the words we're going to be thinking about. And as we start, I want to tell you about a new genre of stories. Not new in itself, but new to me. Relatively new, I guess, all in. I came across it this week, and it's really hard to say, so I'm going to try. Twitterature. Twitterature is actually a very hard word to say. What is Twitterature? It is trying to tell a whole story in 280 characters or less. Fewer for the pedants. 280 characters or fewer. Do you know, I read a few of them this week, and I was pretty disappointed with what I read. They're just not that good. And I say that, my attempts would be much worse. Okay, so it's not that I think that I would be excellent at this, I really wouldn't. But it made me realize just how hard it is to tell a really short story in a way that is really gripping, in a way that sticks with someone, in a way that is evocative or memorable, in a way that captures attention, in a way that really engages you and makes you go away thinking about it. I read a number of these this week, and I can't remember a single one I read. Why? None of them stuck with me. It's really hard to tell a short story well. But Jesus is a master of that art. He knows how to use phrases that really stick with people. So there's lots of phrases that he coins that we still use to this day. Turn the other cheek. The salt of the earth. Or he uses word pictures that have become kind of common in our language. We talk about going the extra mile. Jesus talked about that first. The last couple of weeks as we've been looking at these stories together, we've been seeing a couple of stories that are a bit longer, where Jesus has more time to develop a story, to develop some characters and engage us, but he also is able to do it in really short stories. This one is only 170 characters. That's what I counted at least. Feel free to check my maths later. 170 characters or so. This would fit comfortably within a tweet. Jesus tells a number of short stories like this, memorable stories. You might know of the wise and the foolish builders. You know, the builder who built his house on the rock versus the one who built his house on the sand. Jesus tells a number of short stories that have real meaning, real depth, and real impact. And we're just going to think about one of those. We're going to think about the pearl of great price. See, in these 170 characters that we've just heard read, Jesus packs in so much. Not a single character really is wasted. The implications of his words are pretty explosive, really. The picture is simple, but the details are profound. So what we're going to do for the next few minutes is we're going to kind of run through the story, try and understand the story, and then think about the implications of the story. So first we need to meet our protagonist. And the protagonist in the story is this merchant. What would the life of a merchant be like? He'd be going from town to town, city to city, village to village, and he'd be hunting for a bargain. Either he'd be looking for something that he thinks, oh, great, I can see the true value in this, so I can buy it cheap and sell it high and then make some money. Or He thinks that is so valuable, I really want to have it so I can show it off as kind of some of the treasure that I've gained from my work. The merchant goes from town to town, place to place, buying and selling. And this particular merchant, he has one thing that he is laser focused on. You notice he was looking for fine pearls. Now, in Jesus' day, pearls were the most valued thing you could get. Diamonds were discovered by that point in history, but they really weren't very widely known about, and they weren't as valued as pearls. Pearls were the thing. Pearls were what you would be wanting, and that is what the merchant looks for. He seeks hard for them. Lots of times people make discoveries that they don't really try very hard to find. So I came across a story this week of a family in Australia out on a Mother's Day walk, and one of them kind of half trips over a pebble, and then they look down and it's a pebble of gold. £20,000. It's a nice Mother's Day present, isn't it? Other times, people are kind of looking for something, but they get much more than they're expecting. So you picture the kind of amateur metal detectorist kind of out with their metal detector, and they think they might find a couple of interesting trinkets, and they end up coming across some kind of really significant archaeological find. They're looking for something, but they get much more than they were expecting. The merchant isn't like either of those. He doesn't happen across something. He isn't looking for something of low value and finds something of high value. No, the merchant is more like the antiques expert who scours antiques markets, reckoning that they have a better judge of what's really valuable than anyone else there. So they go up stall by stall and they look at everything in close detail. They try and work out what it's really worth. Is it the real thing? And if so, they buy it because they know that they can sell it on for more. They know what it's really worth. This merchant is an expert in looking for pearls, and he comes across one of great value. This is the moment he's been waiting for. One pearl particularly jumps out at him. We don't know really what attracted him to this pearl. It could be its size, its purity, its luster, its shape, its kind of lack of deformities on the surface. We don't know. But we don't need to know what attracts him. His response tells us everything we need to know about this pearl. You see his response there in little sentence 46. He went away and sold everything he had. You see, true value is shown in what you're willing to give up to get something. So if you're only willing to pay £5 for something, you just don't value it that highly. If you're willing to pay 50, you value it a bit more. If you're willing to sell your house to get it, you really value it. True value is shown in what you're willing to give up to get something. And this merchant, for this pearl, is willing to give up everything. Everything he has. We don't know what he's accumulated over the years, but I guess from all his trading, jewels, fine linen, clothing, treasured trinkets, we don't know what it is. He doesn't have them all kind of stored away in a safe back in his hometown. Almost certainly he's carrying them on him, ready to buy and sell with. These are the kind of things that he would, up to this day, have boasted in. If someone said, show me how successful you are as a merchant, show me the best thing you've ever bought, he would have been able to pull them out and show you the things he really valued. But when he saw this pearl, all of that paled into insignificance. They suddenly became worthless to him. Why? Because he had found something of greater value. And so he sells everything he has, and he buys this one pearl. That's Jesus' story. That's it. Not much to it on one level, and yet the implications are really significant. And to see those implications, we just need to look at the words we've not looked at yet. Those first 7 words we've not considered. Again, Jesus says, the kingdom of heaven is like. The point of this story is to help us to see something about what the kingdom of heaven is like. The kingdom of heaven is shorthand when Jesus uses it for him coming into the world, him bringing people into relationship with himself. He talks about himself as kind of God's king, his appointed ruler who comes to bring people into relationship with himself. Not a distant king who stays far off, but a king who comes near. A king who wants people to understand him and understand how they can live with him. And so this king comes into the world to bring in his kingdom, and he explains what his kingdom is like with lots of stories, of which this is just one amongst many. What is the particular aspect of the kingdom of heaven that Jesus wants us to know from this story? It is its great value. It is the great value of finding this kingdom, of getting to know this king, of finding relationship with God. I don't know what you thought you'd find when you came in this evening. I don't know what brought you here this evening. A whole number of things, I expect. But as you've come in, Jesus says there is something to find this evening. There is something of great value to find. I wonder whether you're here particularly looking for something. Maybe you just get a sense there's something more and you're looking for it. Or maybe you think you know what you're living for, but you're just trying to check this Jesus thing out. See, all of us are looking for something. The merchant looks for fine pearls, but all of us look for something. All of us seek something. We're all seekers. And when you boil it down, what do we all seek? We all basically seek the good life. We seek the things that we classify as making the good life, the things that are to us of greatest value. What makes that list will be different for different people. But ultimately, we are all driven by seeking the things that make our list of values. I guess very few of us would say we're driven by looking for pearls. But I wonder what makes your list. Could be security. You are just desperate to feel financially, emotionally, physically secure, safe. For you, maybe it's more legacy. You want to leave your name behind in this world in a way that people think well of it. Whether that's through descendants or whether that's through achievements. You want a legacy. Maybe it's comfort. You just want life to be a bit easier than it is, and you will do quite a lot to ensure that. Maybe it's experience. You've only got so many years, and you want to tot up the amount of experiences you can have, those kind of pleasurable experiences before it's too late. What Jesus wants us all to know through this story is none of those kind of things that often make our list are of ultimate value. Instead, there is one thing of greater value, a greater pearl, if you like. I don't know if anyone knows the most expensive pearl ever purchased. Marie Antoinette, queen during the French Revolution, or just beforehand at least, she had this beautiful pearl and attached it to this wonderful necklace, and it sold at auction relatively recently for £27 million. It's the most valuable pearl ever sold. Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is worth so much more than that. It is worth so much more than anything. It is worth giving up whatever it takes to get it. Why? Because in this kingdom, you will find everything that you're looking for. In this kingdom, you can be known deeply, meaningfully by the God of the universe. In this kingdom, you can be loved in a way that will never fade. You can be forgiven of the ways that you know that you've messed up, the ways that you know you've fallen short, the ways that you're embarrassed to admit. In this kingdom, God knows those things and he doesn't hold them against you. And that means you can be safe forever, secure forever, because this God will hold you safe. We've titled this series that we've been doing over 3 Sundays, Stories That Have Changed the World. This story has changed the world. And it's done it by changing individual lives. Let me tell you a story of one person who really got this principle. Don't know if he knew the exact story or at what point in his life he came across these exact words, but someone who really got the principle and whose life changed as a result. This person was really successful in their field. They were on track to reach the top. And in their world, in their culture, this was the thing. If you could get to the top of this, that was the highest status you could possibly achieve. You would be looked up to by basically everyone. Your life would be sorted. Everyone would praise you. Everyone would want to know you. You would be financially set. Everything would be fine. To get to the top of this was to make it. And this person was absolutely on that trajectory, well ahead of his peers, guaranteed almost to make it to the top. And then this person came across Jesus. And Jesus turned their life around. Because this person saw that compared to Jesus, all of those other things, they're just not important. They saw in Jesus everything they were really looking for. And so they were willing to give everything else up. That career, that trajectory, it went in the bin. They spent the rest of their life following Jesus' call, and for them that was really costly. They bounced in and out of prison. They hardly had any possessions for the rest of their life. They went from being that highly esteemed person that everyone looked up to the person that everyone looked down on. And they were willing to do it because they saw that Jesus really was the pearl of great price. You might have worked out who this story is about. You might not. This is the Apostle Paul's story. He wrote about half of the New Testament. And he says, compared to knowing Jesus, I count everything else as rubbish. Jesus is the greatest pearl. If I can have him, I'm willing to give up everything else. And his life modeled just that. And it wasn't just his life. So many people through the ages have had their lives changed by seeing that Jesus is the one of greatest value. I think of people I know who looked at their career and thought, I'll get this far and no further. I'll say no to every promotion past this level because there are other things that matter more, and I don't want my job to suck up everything. I want to commit to my family and my church. I can think of people for whom following Jesus meant their family disown them or reject them, or it just makes relationships really difficult and they're willing to do that. I can think of people whose life is a lot less comfortable than it otherwise would have been because they've chosen to follow Jesus. There are those who have given up the opportunity of fame and fortune to follow Jesus. Those are maybe some more dramatic ways, but it happens to everyone who finds Jesus. In small incremental ways, they see that following him, trusting him, being part of his kingdom really is worth giving other stuff up for. That's my experience. In a few moments, we're going to interview Julie, and she's going to tell us a bit about her experience, and she will say the same things. Jesus is the pearl of great price. And so this passage raises a question for each of us. And the question is this: what thing in your life is of greatest value to you? What is the thing that if you rank out your desires, hits the top? What do you value the most? What are you seeking? If this story were written of you, and instead of the merchant it says your name, what would you be looking for? And then a follow-up question. Does that stand up to scrutiny? See, the merchant wasn't going to buy this pearl without looking pretty carefully at it. If he spends his life looking for pearls, he's not just going to see one from afar and go, yeah, I'll have that and I'll sell everything to get it. He's going to make really sure that it is really worth it. It is really worth putting the greatest value on this one thing. I don't know what makes the top of your list, but is it worth it? Does it really stand up to scrutiny? This passage challenges us, I think, to scrutinize what we value and ask the question, does it really stand up? Is it really worth valuing that highly? and to ask that same question of Jesus. Is he really worth it? Does he stand up to scrutiny? Do we value him highly? And if we do, will we be taken for fools? Or is that the best thing we can do? See, I'm confident that anyone who scrutinizes Jesus will come to see, like so many other people have, that whatever else they put their value in before, whatever else they valued above all others, pales into insignificance compared to Jesus. Because Jesus alone is the pearl of great price. That's what he wants us to know from this story. That's what we'd love you to be thinking about. Jesus, the pearl of great price. Is he the one you value above all others? I want to think about what that might look like. We'll talk a bit about that a bit later. But for now, I'll give you guys a break from my voice. Do go grab another drink if you'd like one. And then in a couple of minutes, come back to your tables and we're going to hear a bit from Julie. Good, I'm back on. Great. This is Julie. I've started to introduce her, but do you want to introduce yourself a bit more?
Yep, I'm Julie. I come here to this church. I came from Australia a long time ago. I came to do my PhD and then I was going to go back to Australia, but I'm still here.
Great. You came to a PhD. What was your PhD in? What do you roughly do for work now?
PhD was in biomechanics, and for work now, I watch people walk, basically. We have a clinic set up at the Nuffield Orthopaedic Centre in Headington and have patients referred to us that have problems with their walking. And we measure it, figure out what to do.
Great. Go a bit deeper than that and start to think about some of the things we were thinking about in that talk. What are some of the things that you kind of instinctively value most highly?
Yeah, I think three things I would say. One of them would be family, or the idea of family also, probably because I grew up in a pretty close family, so that would rate highly. And then another one's probably shaped by my experience since then, which is to do with academia. And there is a lot of pressure in academia to achieve, and so you start to value achievements because everyone around you is telling you what you achieve is what's valuable, like writing papers or getting grants or going up the ladder somehow. That's very easy to get sucked into. And then the third thing I think I would say instinctively is some kind of financial security is what you rate as valuable. In my instance, because I'm single, it starts to become, the temptation I think is to strive after that, because I have to do that for myself. No one's going to do that for me. I can't rely on anybody else, and so I have to grasp for that. So I think something's shaped by how I grew up or experience or situation I'm in, but that's kind of the things that would instinctively pull me to be things of value.
Great. So family, achievement in academia, financial security. In what ways have you had to, or been able to, or had the privilege of, phrase it how you like, put those things aside in order to kind of, as you've seen Jesus as the one of greatest value? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, so I can say about each of those three things. So for family, I think growing up, I always just assumed I would get married and have a load of kids, and that would be life. It hasn't worked out that way for me because I've decided to put Jesus first in my life, and that means in order to be married, it would have to be to somebody who thought the same way, because otherwise we'd be pulling in opposite directions, and that would just cause carnage. And so that means marrying somebody who feels the same, who's a believer, a Christian believer as well. And there's just not as many Christian men as Christian women in the church. That's just a fact, which means there are some Christian women who end up not being married. So putting Jesus first in that sense has meant not end up being married. So that's one area. What was the second one? Achievement. Oh yeah. So a few years ago, I quite distinctly remember feeling, recognizing the pull towards achievement in academia. I felt myself being sucked more and more into that because you're surrounded by it all the time, and it's very easy to get sucked into that, particularly if you start to do well in it, and then people start praising you for doing well, and then you just get pulled more and more into that area. But I recognized that that was not healthy. It didn't enable me to put Jesus first, and so made the decision for academia not to be my career. It's kind of a sideline for me, but it's not. I didn't think it would be a healthy career for me, so ended up giving that up. And then, financially, I suppose there's a couple of examples. Several years ago, so I was in a sensible full-time paid job, but then decided to do that. I thought it was important to be serving particularly children in the church, and so gave up half of my paid salary to volunteer half-time for the church. So that put me in a not a very financial stable situation. And currently I'm looking at working for a charity in Africa, which again, at the moment I actually do, again, for the first time in a long time, have a almost full-time salary, but I'm trying to give that up too. So, a few instances of where following Jesus and putting him first has meant giving things up.
And someone listening in might think, that just feels hard, that doesn't feel very fun, why would I want to do those kind of things? Talk us through some of the joys that you found as you've done those kind of things.
Yeah, I can honestly say for all of those things, Jesus has more than compensated, far more than compensated for anything that I've ever given up or lost in that respect. Again, if can think about each of those areas. So family, I'm single and on my own, but he has definitely provided family abundantly. Particularly this church here has definitely been family to me, and God has blessed me over and over again through family here. We're finding family all over the world, in fact, as in traveling around the world, and my extended family too. So he's definitely made up for that in multiple ways. In terms of the achievement thing, in the end, that's not really a loss. Occasionally I feel these twinges of, I see people that did PhDs at the same time as me and all the things that they've achieved, but actually that life is so stressful, the current trying to live up to their expectations, and it's never enough. You always have to go do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. That's not a happy life. And in fact, being freed from that is a much more joyful experience, I would say, and not having to live up to that all the time. And then, just provision, even though on the outside you would say all the decisions I've made have not been necessarily the practically sensible decisions, but God has always provided, and in ways that I haven't looked for, above and beyond, often through church family as well. But he's definitely provided in lots of different ways. And I would above all that, I would say in relation to what we've just been talking about, all of the things that can seem like challenges or things you give up are also all temporary. And the valuable thing is the absolute certainty that we have this hope to look forward to in heaven with God forever, and that never gets taken away regardless of what's going on.
Right, I'm going to go off script and have another question. That's dangerous, isn't it? You started talking about that hope. Talk to us a little bit more about that. What do you? So the Christian hope is that after we die, We'll go to be with Jesus. It's not kind of floating on clouds, but what are you most looking forward to about that kind of moment where you get to kind of experience that pearl in all its fullness? Put the question that way.
More than one thing.
Great, have 10.
Getting to have a uninhibited relationship with God, so no sin, knowing Him perfectly, and getting to see Him face to face, without any of the guilt that comes with daily sin now. Just being able to relate to Him and knowing that He sees a perfect person and be able to relate in that way. Looking forward to that. And getting to, and not just with God, but with individuals as well, that all the relationships that we have with each other are perfect too, that there's no second guessing or wondering what's happening, but we can relate to one another perfectly as well. Also exploring the new creation and being able to, I'm assuming there's going to be mountains and rivers and kayaking, mountaineering, without like pain in your knees and falling over and cracking your head, that kind of thing.
Great. Good. What I'm going to do now, chance for any questions. Do you want to stay up? So feel free to either ask questions of Julie or anything from particularly what we've been thinking about this evening. Any questions you might have, fire at one or both of us.